Okay, welcome back. So in the previous two videos, we saw how to collect the maps from Mudbox. We saw how to put it together and create a displacement map, and how to put everything together as a texture file. There are a few things I would like to go over because I kind of figured them out a little better, and whatever I learn, I want to share with you guys. So let me go back to the vector displacement and talk about how this works and the reason I couldn't really get it to work exactly. So first things first, I'm going to disconnect my color, and I'll make it and I'll gray it out, and I'll go here to my displacement. All right, and if I open my render view and render out, all right, it's finished rendering, and as you can see, we got all little detail that I wanted, but it's not exact, and I would like a little more control over it. So if I go into the texture itself, and you will find a high dynamic range image here, we could go to exposure, and as you see, as I get the exposure up, you will see that the texture will change. So if I will save this now, all right, and I'll render out this section again. Okay, I'm back and after the render, and you can see a major difference. All right, we could see that before we didn't have a lot of the detail that we have now, and it's I get all the little nooks and crannies in, and it looks a lot better. Now the cool thing is that I could play around, all right, with the amount, all right, over here, the amount of the exposure. So that means if I dial it down, let's say 0.1, I mean we dialed it up to 1, all right, to 10, and I will just take half of it this time. So I don't know if you can see it in the video, but there is a little more detail because I've pushed out the data. So again, I could also bring down the data and up the data. Basically, this is a multiplier. So play around with it, learn it, and so on. So using that, I basically get all the detail in, and this really helps to get that fine detail that before was very elusive. So with that, I want to move over and talk about how to light this properly. As you can see, I have these spheres here, and I want to basically light my scene. So let me get to it. So firstly, what I want to do is bring back my color. I'll just drop it in. So now when I'll render, I'll get my my colors. Now before I start rendering, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. As you can see in my color management profile over here, I've put my color map, which is in JPEG, to an sRGB. And as you recall, in the previous video, I turned on the color management. Now this is very important, because if you want to get to real colors, then you're going to have to use the color management. And the color management basically will let you mimic real-world rendering. I mean, just like a photographer. And that's what we always aim to get. So first thing, I'm going to just zoom out a bit so I have a little more room, because it's a little crowded in here because of my displacement. And after taking care of the color management within the render settings, I have to take care of it in my display settings over here in my render view. So I go to display color management, okay, display color management, and we'll open this window over here, and it's asking me for the image color profile. So if I look here, default output profile is linear, so I have to change this to linear, and immediately you could see like someone's turned on the lights. So this helps sort of bring in a little more light and create a more realistic lighting environment. All right, so I'm going to render this now. I'm going to pause the video until it ends, so I'll see you in a few minutes. All right, so we're back, and immediately you can see that this is a lot better. I mean, I could see the reflections a lot better, I could see the highlights a lot better, and so on. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and you will also see that I could see a little more of the detail that before was a little elusive, which is kind of cool. So by doing these little tiny changes, you can get a lot better render. Now, the one thing that's a bit incorrect, I mean, with this, because if I go back, is that we don't have, you know, the direct lighting, because I'm outdoors, so everything's illuminated by the HDR in the background, but it's not giving me the correct shadows and so on. So again, I just want to show you the difference between the two types of display. This is what we were getting before, and this is what we're getting now. It's a big difference. I mean, everything's lit, so that's very important. And if you look closely, you can see, like, I got the little specular map, and I got the lit up areas. All right, so let's add a light. So I'm gonna use a directional light because it's outdoors, and directional light is very comfortable for that. So I'm gonna go to create lights and create a directional light. And if you are using the new node editor, which is kind of cool, you just have to press tab and start writing directional. No, I didn't spell that right. Where is it? Anyway, you get the idea, and then you just find the directional light here, but I'm used to this, so I'm going to use the directional light. Directional, I just was DI and not DE, so sorry about that. Anyway, so here's my light, and what I want to do with the light is very simple. I'm going to take the light, and let me just bookmark this camera view. Bookmark editor, new bookmark. All right, so got a bookmark, and I'm going to just zoom out a bit, and I'm going to scale up my light, and as you can see, this is more or less where the light's coming from. All right, so I'm going to go to my bookmark. All right, there we go. So I've bookmarked this. So now I have the directional light. So a couple of things in Maya 2014, all the shadows I've taken care of. I will get a little. I do want to get a little bit of blaring, so I'm going to just put 1 here. That means I have to bump this up, so I'm going to bump it up to 16, and that's about it. So let me just render, and we'll see how this comes out. All right, so that's done rendering, and again, if we look, now we got nice shadows, and you know, they're nice and sharp near the character, but become nice and dark at the edges, and this is all wonderful. All right, so and you could see, like, the reflections are nice and everything's wonderful, but this character is a little, you know, it doesn't feel very fleshy, and the reason is that the light that's hitting this character is not going into it. It's, you know, it's hitting the character and bouncing back. I do want the light to create some sort of let's call it a translucent effect, like a candle, where the light will go in. That means I won't get these very harsh dark areas. So how do I go about this? There's several ways of doing this, but you could use, like, specific for skin and so on. But I want to use the Mentor Material X for this. So just to explain, just very simply how this works, is we got this translucent button here. And the translucence is connected straight to the refraction, all right? Because the refraction's got to do with transparency. So the transparency and translucency are linked. That means if I turn this on, all right? Wait for a second, all right? Which is in default, it's 50%. I'm going to bump this up to 100%. All right, so it means when this is 100%, is 100% translucency. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a, let's say, 25% transparency. What it means is that it's going to let 25% of the light into the character, but it's going to go through this color here. So in this case, I'm going to give it more of a reddish tint because it's an animal, and it's got probably blood and so on inside. So I'm going to just keep this here. I'm just going to keep the framing, and I'm going to render. But this time I'm just going to render a small section, all right, just so it doesn't take forever. Actually, you know what? I'll do something else as well. I'll go here to my final gather. All right, and under maps, this is a good, I'm going to put it on freeze, and I'm going to give it a name. So actually freeze, I have to turn it on and give it a name. We'll call it Lizzie. Z, all right. And by doing this, is basically it's going to create a name under a folder called Lizzie, and when I'll freeze it, it will just render a lot faster. So that's gonna make my renders a lot faster. So off we go. All right, so I'm done. And now if I change, you could see like all the harsh shadows. All right, all the harsh shadows are now being filled with this reddish tint. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm getting a red tint. Let me just. All right. So what I will do usually is I'll go and create a map for this, considering like the areas that will have more color, less color, and so on. But by doing this, we get a more realistic approach to this. We can also bring up the gloss and so on, and by that diffuse it a bit more. That's the basics on how to do this. So all in all, I went through on how to make this look pretty good. The next thing is how to batch render this. So I'm gonna pause the video. I'm gonna do the eyes, work on the eyes a bit, and then we'll talk about how to batch render this out, and then in Photoshop make something look a lot better. All right, so let me just pause the video for a second and fix the eyes so they look a little more realistic, and we'll move on from there. All right, so I fixed up the eyes, and so they're a little more glossy and so on. So I'm fairly happy with this. I'm not, dead smack happy with it, but it's good enough for me for now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this ready for render. So what I'm going to do is I want to create myself a few layers. Let me get rid of these guys because I don't need them anymore. And I don't know, let's put this guy here. Let's create some horns here. We'll just assign, I don't know, this blend for this. All right, and I will give it a little, just, yellow, and then take it towards the orange, light orange. And a little bit of ambient. Something like that. That looks good enough for me. So, all right. So this is my guy, and what I want to do with him now is render him out. So I'm going to go to my render layers, And the first thing I always do is create what I call a beauty layer. Alright, so I'm going to copy, right click on the layer and copy the layer. Double click on the name and I'll call it RGB. Right, because it's going to be my color layer. Now I'll copy this again, copy. Alright, and this is going to be my occlusion layer. Occlusion. Alright, and I'm going to copy it one more time. Alright, and this is going to be my Z depth. Alright, now I could go on and make a few more, but this is, you know, just like the major ones that I need. So let's start with the occlusion layer, which is the easiest layer. Now usually I just, you know, go in here, attribute, and then in the preferences here I go and choose occlusion. But the reason I'm not going to do this is because I got a displacement. So what I need to do is create myself a few layers. So I'm going to create two. Alright, I'm going to create myself two surface shaders. Alright, and I'm going to pin these. Alright, and I'm going to just clean out my scene. Alright, so I got these two surface shaders. And what I'm going to do is surface shader 1, I'm going to drag and drop it. Alright, now it's very important before I do this to be on my occlusion layer. Alright, drag and drop that on. Actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all. Alright, and then assign to selected. Alright, and then my surface shader 2 is going to go to this guy. Alright, assign to selected. Alright, so now these two I need to create a material that will do the occlusion. So on in the out color, alright, and I go to texturing and look for the MIB occlusion. Alright, the MIB occlusion, and I'm going to choose the other one and drag it into the other one. So they're both getting the same occlusion. Alright, so the samples is how detailed it is. I'm going to start with 32, and the distance I'm going to make it 10. Alright, and we'll leave the speed for now. Alright, so let's test render this. Alright, I'm going to test render this, so I'm going to pause. Okay, it was a fairly quick render, and as you can see I got the 0.7 seconds to render this, and it's a pretty good render. I mean, I'm pretty happy with this. But we have a few issues. So issue number 1, alright, I don't have the displacement. Issue number 2, I have the background. Alright, so what I want to do here in the render stats, alright, in the preview, okay, in the preview view, I'm going to go override and take that off. Environment, override, take it off. In reflection and refraction, all of these, just override and take them off. Alright, very simple. So next time I'll render, it's going to be black. Alright. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my camera just by pressing the icon here. I'm going to scroll down and look for environment and just change it to white. Alright, cool. Now when I'm going to render this, as you're going to see, it's going to be fairly fast. Alright, so I get it. I didn't render the background like I wanted it to, but that's fine. We'll sort that out soon enough. I'm going to override. That should sort it out for next time. Alright, so now we want to take care of this issue, that I don't have all the everything that I need here. So I'm going to pull this down here, and over here you could see my displacement node, right? So what I want to do is basically expand this guy, alright, and I'll get the surface shader node here. All right, and you could see my displacement here, and what I'm going to do is drag and drop the displacement in here. So now when I'll render, and we'll probably render a lot longer. Yeah. Alright, so now I've finished rendering, and you can see that now I have all of the data that I had before. So now what I can do, which should be fairly simple, is come in back to my occlusion and start bumping up stuff. And I can see it's kind of hard in this small render, but it's a little flaky. So let's make it 64. And I actually kind of like the distance. Alright. A couple of things I don't like with the displacement itself, which sometimes in the occlusion I don't like what's happening with its eye here. So I am gonna just dial down. Let's make this -2 just a bit, and I'm gonna render, and we'll see what happens. Alright, so I'm back. So it's done rendering, and it's a little better. Not perfect, but fine. Probably we can change this to mid-bap, and that will make it slightly better. Anyway, so that's that. Let's go over to my next one, which is the Z-depth. Z-depth actually is very easy to make. What I'm going to do is going to go to Edit Attribute. Again, choose the layer you want. Right-click down to Edit Attribute. Go to Luminance Depth. Press this little button here. And then what we have to do is break these connections. Alright, so I'm going to right-click, break connection, right-click, break connection. And immediately you'll see this becomes white. So I'm going to give this like 20. And this should start getting closer. So let's make this 25, 50. Alright, so we're getting this nice darkened shade towards that way. Alright. So again, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually render it with hardware render. Alright. Hardware render renders very, very fast. But as you see, it rendered really fast. And this is what I want to get. So again, I'm going to choose my background. Alright. And I'll use the same technique as before. Okay, just getting rid of everything here. Right? Putting overrides. Okay. So by doing that, should now not get the background, but it's still rendering. So I probably can Control H. There we go. So I get this. Actually, in this case, alright, I want this black because this is in the distance. Alright, so you get this. Now the problem is with the hardware render that anti-aliasing is going to be pretty shit. So I just because I'm going to use this as a blur, so I don't really mind. Alright, so let's now go back to here. Actually, I'm going to do the same trick here. I'm going to hide it in the occlusion pass. Alright, so I'm done. And this is my ambient occlusion. And the way I got to this, because every time I try to render I got like a black background. What I did was just take the floor, duplicated it, put it in the background, and then in each layer I just turned it off. See it? I chose it, and in my layer I just hid it, so it's hidden. All right. Alright, so now I got these 3 layers. All I need to do is batch render. So because I'm rendering a high dynamic range picture, what I'm going to need to do is in here is choose an HDR or an OpenEXR. I have to choose name dot number dot extension. Number of frames, I just want 1. My perspective, and I'm gonna make it 960 on. Let's just make it HD. Oops, sorry. That's my resolution. Mid-size, all right. Custom, I'm gonna go down to. Let's make it a small HD, all right? So what I'm going to do now is go over to my render. Oh, one more thing. Over here, I'm going to add scene, add a slash, render layer, slash, render layer. I always do this because it's going to give me a proper, like the scene name, the layer name, and then an extension. So let's go for it. So let's go to file, not file, let's go to polygon, render, and batch render. Alright, so now that's batch rendering. It's going to start off with the mental ray, and so on. So I'm going to pause here, and we'll be back when it's done in photo. Okay, so we're back from the render, and this is what I got. And you can see all of the, all the details, and it's a pretty nice render. Just, I added another layer called background layer, which is just, the HDR rendered out as an image, so I could put it, so it fits the render. So, I'll just full screen this. Alright, so I got my occlusion pass, I got my Z depth pass, and I got my background. So let's take the background first, and I want to color correct it a bit, but I'll do that after. So I'll do Control A, Control C, and I'll just drop it in, and as you see it will automatically correct because I'm working in an HDR. So you can see I got this nice background. Alright. I can go in to adjust image adjustments, and go to exposure, and maybe mess a bit with the exposure here, just until I get, a little bit brighter. Okay. So, alright, so we got this. And let's add ambient occlusion. So, what I'm going to do is Control A, Control C, Control V. Alright. And I'm going to move it over to multiply. And you can see immediately that we get, this feeling of something touchy. Sometimes I will drop the occlusion a bit. Also, what I can do is go to adjust image, hue saturation, and then press here colorize. Alright, and then we'll make it a bit red. Alright, and we'll darken it up just a tad. Alright, and I will give this like a red hue, which will just helps a bit. Alright? Great. So actually I think in this case I'll undo that. And we'll just dial it down a bit. The next thing I want to do is create a vignette. Vignette is kind of cool. I'll just create a new layer. I will create a marker, make it about that size, doesn't have to be in the middle. I shall put, okay, now because it's an HDR, it's going to give me some trouble. Alright, so not letting me do this, so what I'm going to just do it in a scene that's not an HDR. And then I'll just copy it over. It's always the easiest way when you get stuck. Move that over and pull it in. Deselect. Actually, we'll do that. Invert selection, which is Control Shift I, and then we'll do that. There we go. Deselect. And I'll just tear this off. Alright. I'll just drop this there on top of this one. Yes, please. There we go. Nope, do not save. Alright, and I'll just select that here. So now I've got this layer. And I want to put a filter on it and blur, and we'll just go Gaussian blur. Not seriously blur, so something like that. So now get these little dark areas. Yeah, I just overdid that. Let's try again. Filter, blur, Gaussian. That's about. That should be about right. Alright, I'm gonna Control T. So that's a little bigger. Back down. Right. And this I will darken. What I'll do is I'll just go through the different layers until I find one that works, and if that doesn't work, go back to normal and just dial this down. So it's causing little dark edges. Again, T, pull it out, and I'm fine with it. This will let us, get the feeling of the lens. Alright, so I'm left with creating a depth of field. So the way you do that is basically I'll take these two guys and I'll merge them. And I'll duplicate it. And I will bring this guy in, copy. Alright. And then here I'll create a layer. And I'll paste. That didn't work. If we could get this to work, that would be kind of cool. Just a sec. Alright, so at this stage what we're going to do, we're going to change this into just a normal 16-bit. And we'll also do not merge. And I'll just merge it nicely. And the reason I've done that is so I can do this. Copy. Alright, sorry, I jumped the stage here. Let me just deselect. Alright, so I want basically everything from here, right? So, or I could just press Control. Alright. What I'm going to do is just go Select, Color Range, pick a color. Alright, and my color range will come up, and we'll just go like this and copy. Alright. Over here, I'll create a new layer and just go Paste. So I get this thing. Alright. And then I'm going to press Control, deselect it, go down to the copy of the layer, alright, and press this button here, which will create the mask. So I have to get rid of this layer now, because I'm done with it. So I got this mask, alright, so it's, if I turn this on, you'll see it's sort of, this is in focus, but this is not. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take this layer, go down to blur, alright, and we could go to lens blur. Alright, so this is a lens blur, and lens blur has all kind of little quirks to it. Alright, so and I'll do that. So what I've done is I use this thing to basically decide what's going to be in focus and out of focus. If I do Control I reverse it to being black instead of white. This guy's going to be in focus, but everything else at the back is going to be out of focus, and then you get these lovely little highlights. So that's the trick. So here we got a very nice sort of photorealistic scene where we got nice shaders, and we got the ambient occlusion going on, which is off and now it's on again, and we got highlights and everything going. So that's the end of my video. I hope this was helpful. All these little tips and tricks, you can find on the internet, and if you have any questions, and you want to know how to get around different problems, you could post me. You could go to my website, and good luck, and see you around.